We're back on the slopes here, the Terminillo, ending 91 miles of racing today. We're just under 2. Looking at the fourth man on the road there briefly, that was Pavel Tonkov as we swing back up to the 2 leaders. On the left in the yellow is Stefano Garzelli. On the right in the red is Gilberto Simoni. Both riders have won the Giro d'Italia before. Both riders last year were slung out of this race for suspicious products. Okay, Simoni got his credit back and Garzelli got a suspension, Bob, but they're both back now.
Both back at the front of this bike race. We said before that a revenge-motivated rider is difficult to beat. That's a dangerous beast. They're surrounded by the Wildcats and the Apennine Wolves, and they're all surrounded by each other right now. The animals are far down the road behind them, trying to chase. 6 seconds to Noe, who's riding a good day today, but these 2 riders are our main men in the Giro d'Italia now. They've annihilated Pantani, Casagrande, Frigo, Aitor Gonzalez, all of them floundering in their wake back down the mountain. And these 2 riders, I think, will fight it out. If they start to mark each other after these very difficult accelerations, we'll see if somebody doesn't come up from behind like Tonkov or Noe, but I think it'll be these 2 contesting the sprint no matter who catches them from behind.
What I think is remarkable here, Phil, is that the man on the left-hand side in the yellow jersey, Stefano Garzelli, yes, he was thrown out of the Giro d'Italia last year. He always proclaimed his innocence, but to have 12 months out of the sport and come back and be rivaling at the front end of the bike race on a mountaintop finish is really quite remarkable. And to expound on a little story I mentioned just about 2 or 3 days ago, what he did when he was banned, he went back and looked at his racing diary, and he matched his racing diary to the year when he wasn't racing kilometre for kilometre, which is a very difficult thing to do. For example, if he'd ridden Milan-San Remo in March the 19th, he went out and rode 285 kilometres that day. Absolutely remarkable to have the brain and the dedication to go and do that. A lot of time there being lost, you can see, by Marco Pantani. But it's looking now as if this is going to be a superb duel between these 2 riders, and I certainly wouldn't like to run out right now and put a bet on who's going to win, because this is a real psychological moment. You see that look across there? It was to see Gilberto Simoni wanted to know what Garzelli was like. But this man, Noe, is riding himself back into the Giro.
Here comes Andre Noe. He's recovered and he's climbed back into the action here. That is a fine piece of riding. The other 2 are now thinking of beating each other. Thought they'd killed off the rest of the Giro. Well, there's now 3 of them completing the climb up towards the summit. We are approaching the 2 kilometres to go now, and 3 men are attacking the finishing line together. This is most interesting now. Now, we've seen Pantani has lost over 2.5 minutes, but he still has a very good position on the climb, but it's just going to give us an idea of the spread across the riders now, Bob. It's going to be many minutes to some big names.
Yes, absolutely. That was a great look that Simoni gave Garzelli. He's been doing all the making of the tempo so far on this climb in the finale to destroy the bike race. Looked over at Garzelli to ask him to come through and contribute a little bit to the pacemaking. Garzelli not choosing to do that, staying on his shoulder, even in the slipstream, and that's given Noe a chance to come back to our 2 leaders. Now it looks like it might be a 3-up sprint. 1.5 kilometers to go. Maybe these riders will catch up together also if they start to mark each other too much before the finish.
Now, Paul, Andre Noe has not won a bike race since the Tour of Romandie stage. Remember, he won back in May 2000.
That was an awful long time ago. In fact, he's not won that many bike races in his career, Phil. I don't think. I think he has a total career tally of 2 victories. But he's the kind of man who rides high in the overall classification on many, many occasions. And in fact, that year when he got his win in the Tour of Romandie, he finished 4th overall and went on to finish 4th overall in the Giro. He would certainly love to win this race here, but he's up against 2 men who really have a serious desire to try and win themselves a stage victory at the Giro d'Italia. Garzelli already has one, Bob. I think Simoni is much more at ease on this mountain slope.
Simoni looks fantastic, looks very powerful on this climb throughout it. He's not been in any difficulty whatsoever. Garzelli perhaps a little bit faster sprinter at this moment. We saw him beat Mario Cipollini yesterday. Pelizzotti has come out of nowhere trying to catch back up to the rest of the breakaway, and this is an unbelievable ride by the 2 Alessio riders. Now Simoni's starting to lead out the sprint. Garzelli won a stage in a sprint over Pataki and Casagrande, and now he has a chance to win another stage, and that's an acceleration from Simoni. It's putting Noe in a lot of hurt there.
Well, no, right up in the red zone there at about 5,500 RPM if he was driving a very fast car. He was just not able to stick with that acceleration. I think a little bit of matching going on between Garzelli and Simoni at the moment, but now is the time when Simoni wants to try and get himself the victory. And I feel, Phil, that he thinks the only way he can do this is by putting time between himself and Garzelli. If he does put time between himself and Garzelli, he's got a chance of getting himself the pink jersey, but he does need to beat him by a number of seconds.
Well, Garzelli, mano a mano with Gilberto Simoni, who's tried yet another fierce acceleration. What a gifted climber he really is. Poor old Pelazzotti almost latched on. He's gone straight out of the back door again. So too is Noe, who did latch on. I think that was 1.5 kilometres to go, that banner there, to the summit. These two are still working out each other's strengths. And Simoni will be a little bit upset that Garzelli looks to be struggling a little bit. He's still matching him here. And this is most interesting now. These are the two riders who are establishing themselves as the two outstanding favourites for this year's Giro. They both won this race before. They've both been in disgrace since. But now they're trying to re-establish themselves. And look at this. He's coming back. See, sometimes you can't answer the accelerations, Bob, but if you stick by your guns and don't panic, you ride back in.
When you stick to your own tempo and somebody accelerates, sometimes you can catch back up to them. Simoni, all he has to do is look down the road, and he can attack almost at will now and drop anybody in this bike race except Stefano Garzelli, who's matched him pedal stroke for pedal stroke. He stayed right on his shoulder there. I think that last acceleration that momentarily got rid of Noe really put Garzelli into a little bit of hurt, but Simoni was unable to break the thread to Garzelli, and now Noe just reintegrated with the leader. This is a great bike race and a fantastic, it'll be a furious sprint to the finish. I think right the next acceleration, Noe will be popped and we'll not see him again until after the finish line, and it'll be Garzelli and Simoni sprinting it out for the win. Garzelli now almost assured to inherit the pink jersey from Pataki at the end of the day.
This is a big psychological battle, Phil, right now, because you can see Garzelli, he really is under a bit of difficulty, but he will not lay down his arms either. He will come up on every occasion and ride alongside Gilberto Simoni, because you can see what he wants to do is show Simoni that there's no problem at all. They're now approaching that very famous flag in the world of professional cycling, the Flamme Rouge, the red kite, indicating they're inside the last kilometre to go.
Well, it'll take a little while, more than about a minute that we've seen the sprinters come home in. It'll probably take them 2 minutes plus here. And there'll be a little bit of a tactic too. Now, watch out for Noe, because the best plan of attack here is to hit him before they start thinking, Bob.
Well, if they can take advantage of this hesitation right now, carry his momentum that he had coming back in, put in a little bit of attack, you never know. They might start to mark each other, but I don't think he has it in his legs to handle any acceleration that Simoni might make, or Garzelli. Garzelli has been sprinting great in the bike race so far, and Simoni looking absolutely majestic on this climb today, the first big mountain of the Giro d'Italia.
Well, Simoni looks the best right now. Garzelli certainly is in difficulty. You look at his pedaling action now and again, you can see the little kick of the heels trying to get that extra bit of power, but he will not give up at all, Phil. Every opportunity he gets, he tries to come up alongside Simoni here to say, there's no problem, I'm still here. You've got rid of a feeling that's going in a fight here this afternoon, and it's going to be a very dodgy sprint here for Garzelli if he wants to try and win it, because I think the only thing in the back of his mind right now is he knows he has to stay in contact with the red jersey to swap his yellow one today, Phil, for a pink one.
I just had the feeling that Garzelli has suffered enough to hang on to Simoni and might produce the sprint here, because he's a fast finisher. If you take him to the finishing line, you get surprised and you see the banner, you find you've got fresh legs again. Noe looks to be a little bit contented now with his ride up with the two champions, and what a superb ride. How has he suffered to make sure he's finished almost in the same time. Let's see if he can hold on now. We're into the last couple of 100 metres here. Simoni, what a good ride by him, being content to make the pace all the way up, even to the line. Now, has he got a kick there to stop Garzelli winning his second stage of this race? I'm not too sure he will have, because of the 20-second win bonus, even in the mountain stages here. But Simoni grits his teeth. Now comes Garzelli, and this will give him the pink jersey and the bonus. Stefano Garzelli gets the win, gets the bonus, gets the pink jersey, but what bets that Simoni will remain the big favourite as he crosses this in second place, might even lose a second in the sprint there, with Andrea Noah getting third.
Well, I tell you what, I have to say Stefano Garzelli was suffering over the last few kilometres of that climb, as we see here Pavel Tonkov coming across the line in 4th place. But you were right, Phil, as soon as he saw that finishing line, he reacted very much like a sprinter and had the acceleration to come round and get himself the win. This is Raimundus Rumsas coming up for 5th place, but in fact he's not going to get it because Garzelli's teammate is going to come over the top of him.
Good ride by Mazzolini here, I think.
Fantastic ride by Mazzolini. He annihilated the whole peloton with the initial accelerations on the climb, and he's still in there in the finale. That's a great ride by both Sabagliakis and Mazzolini, who did most of the teamwork before their big bosses took over, Garzelli and Simoni.
This is Pelazzotti coming in right now. He started the day in 4th position in the overall classification. He'll still stay very high up in the top 10, but we will have no problem at all in realizing Garzelli is the new leader of this bike race. Julio Perez, he's had a very difficult climb. He hasn't lost all that much time. He's kept himself within the limits of staying in the top 10 in the overall classification, and he'll cross the line just outside of 1 minute 15 seconds in arrears.
So 9th place for Perez, 10th place for Tocznik. That completes the first 10 riders home. One of those is going to win the Giro d'Italia, and I suspect it's amongst the names Garzelli, Simoni, but you never know. Tonkov again continues his love affair with this event, changes teams but doesn't change his luck in this race. There is one rider who has had a really rough ride today. The leader of the Lampre squad, Francesco Casagrande, really has not ridden well on this climb, Bob.
He's 1:40 now, and he's still trying to find his way to the finish line. 3 hours, 55 minutes, 19 seconds for our winner, Stefano Garzelli, but it only took about 5 kilometers to absolutely blow this race to pieces. So 4 hours in the saddle today, but only a few kilometers to the finish, making the big difference, and Casagrande losing a ton of time, over 2 minutes now.
Well, that's Michele Scarponi who's coming in with him, the teammate of Mario Cipollini, who will be in the autobus or the gruppetto this afternoon, keeping a very close eye on the clock and wondering about the elimination times. But this man, I looked at him before the start of the Giro d'Italia, Bob, and I thought he had a serious chance of winning in this year's bike race. Don't discount him, though, because he is a very aggressive bike rider and maybe, like many riders, not so comfortable on the first big mountain of the race.
If he can limit his losses to Garzelli and Simoni, he might still have a chance to put in something special once we get to the real mountains of the bike race in the Dolomites and the Alps. Here come the rest of the riders struggling on. That's Belli, you can see, Freddy Gonzalez there, and another Saeco rider. That team did a great job today. Simoni couldn't quite get the stage win, but he did match Garzelli all the way to the line, and I think he established himself as the strongest climber in the Giro so far this year.
You see the riders putting on little racing capes here, pieces of plastic to make the cold descent now against the race. They're allowed to do it if they keep over. Sometimes the judges don't allow that. Cars, of course, can't go back for a while, and they'll probably descend to the hotels. But as we watch here, the riders continue to come in. The big news is that Garzelli has taken his 2nd stage win, and I hate to remind him, Bob, and you, but he won 2 stages last year, was slung out the Tour, and lost both of those stages in the record books.
Yes, he did. They were taken away from him when it was found that he had probenecid in a drug test that was conducted earlier. Very bad luck, I mean, but at the end of the day, you have to be wary of every single product that goes into your body. And here comes Marco Pantani, and look at the time gap. It's going to be close to 4 minutes when he gets to the line.
Marco Pantani is in the group. There he is, coming up, losing just on 4 minutes. Not the climber, obviously, he was a few years ago, but still getting up with some of the strong men of this race. He's probably just scraping in, Paul, to the top 25, 26 finishers.
Well, I think he's done a pretty good ride. He really hung on to that leading group for an awful long time. He's basically, as we look down on the sprint here, you can see the easy win here of Stefano Garzelli. He even has time to look over his shoulders to see what sort of a gap he has between himself and Gilberto Simoni. He will have dreamed about this. He's got himself 2 stage victories under the belt right now, and as you said, Phil, he will also put on the pink jersey.
Well, just looking at the overall classifications, watch Garzelli here. There's no doubt he will be in the pink now, because Pataki is going to finish many minutes behind him indeed. Casagrande will probably lose his 3rd place because Pelazzotti will claim that, I would think, while Simoni might go over Pelazzotti as well. And here we have now the order of the finish here: Garzelli, Simoni, Noe. Simoni, I think, will move up to 2nd place overall now with that performance. The Fassa Bortolos, the men we've talked about for the previous 6 days of the race, well, they have really lost out today. They've got no man in the overall now, as Alessandro Petacchi has dropped away from the leaderboard. They're going to come up here, you know, for the next half hour now, despite the fact the pressure only went on at the base of this climb. Despite the ride today, they will still lose a lot of big time. But the news is that Stefano Garzelli, now the winner of 2 stages, and look at this as Aitor Gonzalez comes up to the line. He's certainly not a contender in the overall now. So we don't yet know who's going to win the Giro d'Italia, but we certainly can tell you who is not going to win the Giro d'Italia. We'll take a short break and come back for some of the presentations. Thanks very much, and we'll see you very soon. And welcome back. Well, it's all over. The first big mountain stage of the Giro d'Italia, and Stefano Garzelli has taken the victory. It really was the first time he saw the front was when he saw the finishing line, and he got the better of Simoni. There's the stage results. Same time for Simoni. They didn't dock him for that slight gap he had behind Garzelli. Andrea Noah taking third at 2 seconds. Tonkov at 14. Looking further down here, the time gaps begin to grow rather alarmingly, as we see now the men that made that original 9-man breakaway. Perez coming in 10th place there, 1 minute 20 seconds down. Now, the overall leader, we saw him in trouble right at the start of the climb. Alessandro Petacchi arrived at the finish in this small group of riders here, 16 minutes and 32 seconds behind. He is no longer a contender for the pink jersey in this year's Giro d'Italia. This man certainly is, though, because on the podium tonight, taking his pink jersey, is Stefano Garzelli. And Bob, you called him, mate, and there he is in pink.
Stefano Garzelli not only sprinting well in the early stages of the Giro d'Italia, he's also a great climber. I thought he'd be able to match Simoni's accelerations, and he's a little bit more powerful in the sprint. But I have to say, Paul, that Gilberto Simoni put in a fabulous climb today, but that didn't prevent Garzelli from getting the pink jersey.
Well, he's in the pink right now, Phil, but I think there'll be an awful lot more challenges come from Simoni when we go to the big mountains at the top end of Italy, the Dolomites and the Alps.
Well, there's no doubt now that Gilberto Simoni, who said he was going to blow the field apart on this climb, he's found one man who desisted the attacks, and he's going to have to think about how to deal with him in the days that lie ahead. But right now, Simoni comes up into second place, while up from second into the lead goes Garzelli. There's only 31 seconds. Andrea Noah always has a great ride in this event. He's up to third. Pelazzotti there in fifth. As we look further down, Tonkov in the frame in 6th place. Rumzas, who finished third in last year's Tour de France, he is in 7th place. Popovic doing a great ride, and a lot of big future for this man. He's up to 8th place overall. Well, the 2 early climbs kept Freddy Gonzalez in the green jersey because he scored well there with a win and a 2nd place, and just as well because he didn't score any points when it came to that last climb of the day. He was rather a long way behind by the finish, but he's still in the frame as leader of the King of the Mountains. Paul, there were no big surprises in the end, except Casagrande.
Well, let's not forget Casagrande, who really crumbled, but I think the big shock to me was really Aitor Gonzalez and Dario Friga. We talked about those 2 Fassa Bortolo riders as men who could possibly win this bike race, but they certainly crumbled on the first mountain stage. But let's not forget, Phil, 2 weeks of bike racing to go.
Yeah. Bob, perhaps tomorrow a return of Cipollini, perhaps?
Yes, perhaps. It seems as if the Duke of Lucca has passed the sovereign scepter of the sprints over to the new prince on the block, Alessandro Petacchi, and we're seeing a real changing of the guard. But let's hope there's one last win in the legs of Mario Cipollini to equal the record of Alfredo Binda of 41 Giro stage wins. If that doesn't happen, let's not forget that 40 wins in the modern era of any Grand Tour is an absolutely phenomenal accomplishment.
Yeah, absolutely so. I feel a bit sorry for Petacchi. I didn't expect him to lose 16 minutes.
It's incredible what the mountains can do to a sprinter. When you're riding in the Gruppetto, you're losing huge chunks of time every time you do a pedal stroke, and eventually at the end of the climb, Garzelli, Simoni way ahead of Cipollini and our erstwhile leader, Alessandro Petacchi.
All right. Well, of course, the race goes on. We've had one big showdown tomorrow. It might be the return of Mario Cipollini. We can have a look now at the map as we start on a flatter stage today. We don't top more than 500 metres all day. The rider's driving right up the centre of Italy here, from Rieti to Arezzo. So we might well see Cipollini trying to get that elusive stage win. Don't forget our coverage coming to you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll show you all of the highlights of another great day of racing. It is the 8th day of the Giro d'Italia. We're on the 9th day of the race. We've had one rest day so far as we move on there up from Rieti to Arezzo. All of the information will keep you bang on top of things if you come and see us at our website, which is olntv.com. Comments there too from Bob, Paul and myself. Hope you're enjoying the coverage. For Paul Sherwen, Bob Roll, Phil Liggett saying goodbye. We'll go to the winner in 2 weeks' time in Milan. It highlighted the strengths of some and the weaknesses of those who saw their dreams implode. 9 riders set the early pace on the climbs while Marco Pantani fought bravely to keep in touch. Then a vicious acceleration from Gilberto Simoni, and only Stefano Garzelli could follow. They were joined by an outstanding Andrea Noe, and in the end Simoni's perfect tactics saw him lose the icing on the cake as the stage went to Garzelli. We now have a new leader in Stefano Garzelli as the race returns briefly to flatter roads. That's next on OLN. Yes, after the Battle of the Mountains, today the riders in the Giro d'Italia course over some of the most famous cycling roads of Italy as we go through Abruzzo, Umbria and on into Tuscany, as the riders now face up to a slightly flatter stage than the finish of yesterday. Hello again, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Phil Liggett, joined of course by Paul Sherwen and Bob Roll. Welcome again, guys. Well, yesterday was the first big decisive day of this year's Giro, the battle of the big mountaintop finish. For some it worked out, and for others, Paul, they lost real big time, and probably the Tour.
A lot of riders really got caught out, I think, Phil, by that first big mountain of the Giro d'Italia. But there was no surprise to us, because at the end of the day, it was the 2 men we'd really been talking about as the pre-race favourites who came out of the pack. Stefano Garzelli was absolutely superb, and I think he dug very deep to take the Maglia Rosa just 1 year after he took it last year. But after that Maglia Rosa, there was a little bit of a bombshell, but hopefully there's not going to be the same ending to the story this year. But when he came up to the line, Phil, he was absolutely ecstatic.
Yeah, he certainly was. It all worked out for him, Bob. But don't forget, we're going to Arezzo now. Cipollini won there, I think it was 97.
Yes.
In 1927, Alfredo Binda won there. Is this going to be the day that Cipollini joins him on the record number of stage wins?
Well, we hope so. It would be great for the race if he could do that. Before the Giro started, we knew that Simoni and Garzelli would be up there, especially when the GC battle started to unfold. We thought that Cipollini would be there too, but he's missed a bunch of opportunities. The closest was stage 4, but in stage 1 right here, cleanly beaten to the line by a flying Alessandro Patacchi. That would sort of set the rest of the race into motion up until this point. Patacchi's been the king of the sprints, and Cipollini is not so super in the Giro this year.
But you know, form does change over a race of 3 weeks, and let's hope in Cipollini's case it changes for the better. He certainly had a little bit of bad luck as well, because he certainly hit a hole approaching the line, that narrow sprint with Patacchi, and he may have won. Anyway, the new man in the pink jersey. For 6 days we saw Alessandro Patacchi. Well, today we now see Stefano Garzelli. Almost a year to the day when he was rejected from the Tour because of taking a banned substance. Let's hope these are going to be really happy days for him. Garzelli leading the race now from the big favourite, Simoni 31 seconds behind. Andrea Noe comes up into 3rd place. He's finished 4th in the Tour before. And Pelazzotti, another good ride from him, he's up in 5th. Of the top 10, we're looking at some serious contenders now. Tonkov is still there in 6th place. Popovic, the youngster at 23 years of age, holding 8th place. Eddie Mazzolini there in the 10th position. Francesco Casagrande, he really had a bad ride yesterday and slipped away to 11th. Perez came up to 12th. Pantani dropped only a little to 19th. This is turning out to be quite a curious race in many ways, but the two men we've always said were the top men are holding those top two positions, Paul. Now, today we don't expect the pink jersey to change shoulders. We do expect the sprinters to come back into play.
Well, it should be really a stage for the sprinters, and they will be coming out to try and do something very special. I have to put my money on Mario Cipollini today because he's going into the area in Arezzo where, in fact, he raced for his first professional team, Del Tongo. Let's have a quick look at the route. It's a long route, 214 kilometres, but reasonably flat for the whole day.
Thanks, Paul. And we're looking down at the peloton now, and they're strung out in a long straight line here. Not surprisingly, all of the teammates of the new race leader, Stefano Garzelli, there he is in the pink, has got the men controlling the peloton. We've had a number of attempts to escape. The riders at the moment are running about 15 minutes behind the slowest arrival time, so they're not rushing to the finish in Arezzo today. And as we look at them here, we have about 50 miles still to run down to the finish. Well, at the start today, nobody retired yesterday, which is good news. The mountain not claiming anybody. All 165 riders who finished yesterday's stage in the start line again today. That means 14 of the 19 teams still possess a full squad of 9 men. So, Paul, nothing out of the ordinary happening yet. The peloton just getting on with the day's work, by the look of it.
Well, they've seemed to have got on with the day's work rather early here, Phil, because, in fact, after a fairly slow start at an average of 33 kilometres an hour, just over 20 miles an hour, they've actually picked up the pace, and it's the teammates of Stefano Garzelli doing all of that pacemaking on the front end of the main field. The important thing, I think, Phil, is today's a superb day of weather for the riders. It's around about 75, 80 degrees Fahrenheit, not too much humidity in the air at all. Most of the Italian riders, by the way, will know the finish today because Arezzo has always been for the last few years the start and finish of the Giro di Toscana, which happened around about 10 days before the start of the Giro.
One of your favourite racing areas, this, Bob, isn't it?
It is so beautiful, this part of Italy. I recommend everybody at one point in their lives come down here, bring your bicycle, bring your wallet so you can buy lots of the best pasta and some of the best wine in the world. This is a great place to ride a bike.
Well, we're looking now at the riders in the Giro d'Italia heading towards Arezzo. They've left Rieti. Remember, it's a ride of 214 kilometres. That's about 134 miles today. And I wonder if Mario Cipollini can take out the stage that will equal the record set by Alfredo Binda. We'll know soon. And the warming sight of the full peloton here, the big pack in the Giro d'Italia, 165 of them down there below our helicopter as they head in towards the last 70 kilometres of the race now. And the pace is picking up, but of course the team's keeping this well under control.
Very much under control, Phil. It's strange to see that the team of Stefano Garzelli is doing so much work on the front end of the main field right now, because I would say over the next 4 days, 3 of those days most certainly are going to be days of the sprinters. So really it should be the sprinters teams doing most of the pacemaking on the front. I think Mario Cipollini will certainly be looking for the victory today, and I've got my fingers crossed that he equals that record of Alfredo Binda, a 59-year-old record.
Yeah, I think I said earlier, Bob, it was 1927, but in fact it was 1928 when Binda won his stage. It's proving to be a lot tougher than we all thought, isn't it?
For Cipollini to get to that record, yes, it's been very difficult, and we thought that he would have surpassed it by now. He's had plenty of chances. He's been dropped on some of the hills. Obviously, yesterday was not a chance for Cipollini, but up until that point, Pataki had won 3 stages already. Logically, he would have been able to come around him at least once or twice. Today is another shot. I think tomorrow is another decent chance for him, and we'll see what happens. Maybe it stood for so long because it's impossible to break, and Cipollini's the man. And if he doesn't get it here pretty soon, I don't know how much morale he's going to have to climb a stage like we're going to see, number 12, up to Zoncolan, which is an absolutely grisly climb, one that Garzelli and Simoni will love, but all the sprinters will really detest that. Just try to get through it. Cipollini chasing a very elusive record, and it's proving to be more difficult than I think even he believed it to be.
Routine call there, back to the service cars. Well, Bob mentioned 2 names there, Garzelli and Simoni. Well, both of these men have had to re-establish themselves in the race this year. And now we can go and talk to Bob with more on Garzelli and Simoni.
In Italy, they say, non fa stallone dall'asino. You can't make a thoroughbred out of a donkey. But the question is, can you make a champion bike racer out of an also-ran? Simoni and Garzelli, who brought the Giro into ill repute at last year's race, have proved that adage to be true. Both are fantastically gifted bike racers. On the Tirminillo, Simoni proved his exoneration to be justified, and Garzelli proved his positive finding for an antiquated masking agent at last year's Giro has done nothing to his morale and has only strengthened his resolve. One thing has remained constant for both these cyclists. They are gifted athletes and true thoroughbreds of bike racing. And irrefutably, they are champions of the Giro d'Italia.
Well, the peloton continues on now under the guard of the team. Vini Calderola of Stefano Garzelli, and Simoni still waiting in the wings just. He said the climb yesterday wasn't long enough or hard enough for him to break the will of Stefano Garzelli, but maybe Garzelli would have other things to say about that. This is the team of the new leader of the Tour now. Now, Garzelli is the protective man, the man they call the captain, the man they feel can win the race for them. The other men we refer to as domestiques, the helpers. It's their job in the Giro now to look after him, to keep him out of trouble, to give him a bike if he falls off, to change a wheel if he punctures, but to make sure, above all, he stays at the sharp end of the race and not lose any time. And really, Bob, that's all they've got to do.
Yes, absolutely. They want to stay in the front of the bike race. Also, there was a lot of accelerations, riders trying to break away early in the stage, maybe build up a big lead, and before those breaks are established, there's a huge change in rhythm in the peloton. It's very hard, physiologically speaking, on the legs to slow down and speed up, cover attacks, and then be reabsorbed. So I think Garzelli was having maybe a little bit of lactic acid left over from yesterday's huge effort to win the stage and get the pink jersey as race leader. So he's put his riders on the front of the bike race to make a regular tempo, ride at a steady pace, even though it's been quite fast throughout the day. At least there has been no more attempts to break away. And pretty soon, as they get a little bit closer to the town, the sprinters teams will take over and it'll be a mad dash to the finish line. When you're the team director and you look and you see the red guard there right in the middle of the group, that's Gilberto Simoni's team Saeco. Right around him, the whole team grouped around him. That's exactly what you want to see. And if he has any trouble at all, they'll be right there to service him. Meanwhile, the Vini Calderola Cedermec team is on the front of the bike race doing a lot of tempo, and I think that these guys are not looking forward to the rest of this Giro d'Italia, because we're going to see them on the front a lot.
Well, Paul, we're just about 20 kilometres from the Inter-Giro sprint, which is hotting up. This is the interim competition.
Well, we'll see a change in the guard at the front end of the main field when that approaches. But I have to say, just to exaggerate the point we've been making here about the team of Stefano Garzelli, Garzelli himself has been very attentive since the start of this bike race. And in fact, he's probably the only one of the leaders not to have lost any time on one of the flat stages to the sprints. And that, I think, indicates just how good his form is at the moment. But I think he will have a very difficult time when we come up to the big mountaintop finish at Zoncolan on stage 12, because in that mountaintop finish yesterday, I have to say, Gilberto Simoni looked an awful lot more comfortable, and I probably agree with him that the climb wasn't best suited to Simoni.
But you know, these are the sort of questions you could always ask us when you come online with us. Our next web chat date with you is Wednesday, May 28th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Both myself, Phil Liggett, Paul Sherwen and Bob Roll will be in the chat room, www.olntv.com. Come and have a chat with us, and we'll do our best to explain. We know at times that the way these races are scored is very complicated. Many of you ask us, why isn't the first man over the line every day, the stage winner, the race leader? Well, it's a matter of shortest time around the whole course. And if you're running with the shortest time to any particular day, then you wear the pink jersey. And the reason you wear a pink jersey is so the public knows who is leading the race. It's pink, by the way, because that's the colour of the sponsoring newspaper, La Gazzetta della Sport. And so, as we look down on the whole field here of the Giro d'Italia, they're heading to the interim sprint. It's still about 15 kilometres away. So, tricky roundabout, I think, for the riders here, as they're heading now 57 kilometres to the finish. So we're closing in on that Inter-Giro point. And the field still very much all together here as they file through another one of these beautiful towns. We're heading into Tuscany now. And we're looking down there at the team of the new race leader, Stefano Garzelli. There he is, just taking some food out of his back pocket in that pink jersey. Remember, he was so happy with his win yesterday because it all happened exactly 1 year to the day when he was thrown out of this race. This is a flashback here. He won 2 stages last year, and he won in Anse, in Liège, in Belgium, and Limoni, Piemonte. And then he was disqualified for the use of the prohibited drug probenecid, something he denies to this day, but he served really a year's suspension because he never rode his bike again until April this year. But he did ride very hard in training. He tried to emulate races by training on his own and as if he was riding races. And boy, he's come back big time, because to come back and in only 4 weeks of riding, there we go. Go Mario has been cut out of the cornfield there. Today might be the day for him. But it is a remarkable result, isn't it, for Garzelli, Bob?
Yes, that's a great job by Garzelli, and I think the aliens have visited the Giro overnight and put some Vai, Go, Mario crop circle there in the field in Italy. So be aware that aliens have arrived at the Giro, or maybe it's just Marco Pantani's family.
Just looking at Mario down there, Paul, well, he's still looking for 41.
It's an unbelievable record, Phil. It's been around for an awful long time. 59 years since Alfredo Binda won that record, or set the record. Mario Cipollini is tickling there with just 40, but look at the names behind Learco Guerra, Konstantin Geradengo, Eddie Merckx, 25 wins. And if you look even further down, the names that appear are names like Fausto Coppi, Roger de Vlaeminck and Francesco Moser. There are no riders currently in action, Phil, who have got any chance at all of getting close to that record of Mario Cipollini and Alfredo Binda. And I would really like to see Mario Cipollini equal that record. He holds 2 records as well, as the winner of the fastest road stage of the Tour of Italy and the fastest road stage of the Tour de France. He's had an absolutely superb career, and to even just to equal that record here at the Giro d'Italia would be phenomenal. So I'm backing Mario Cipollini to win at least 1 stage in the next 4 days. Bob thinks otherwise, because Bob, I think, is supporting the much younger riders on the way through the ranks.
Okay, Bob, you're not feeling very good about the finish today for Mario, are you?
Well, when we think back to just a couple of days ago, and Cipollini had the perfect lead out from his team, he swung out into the wind, looked down at his legs and found that there was nothing in there, completely empty. He gave up the sprint right there, wound up 6th on the stage, and Isaac Alves Lopez came flying around, and Pataki came around, and even Stefano Garzelli came around. So it might be a while before we see him win another stage. He needs to get through the mountains, and I think the Pianura around the Venice region is a little bit better chance for Mario Cipollini to win a stage, because the younger riders haven't gotten fatigued yet, and they are a little bit quicker in the sprint so far in this Giro.
Well, one thing that hasn't changed is his popularity, because at the sign-in this morning, Stefano Garzelli cruised up to sign in, and the crowd applauded him nice and complimentary, as with Gilberto Simoni. But when Mario Cipollini came to sign in on the podium, the crowd went absolutely ballistic. He's obviously the #1 popular bike rider in this year's bike event, with, of course, Marco Pantani. I think the interesting thing, though, is, Bob, that yesterday Marco Pantani came onto the podium and the crowd gave him the support as if he was the leader of the bike race.
He is the absolute biggest sports star in all of Italy, because he was such an underdog during his early career as a bike racer. They took him to heart, took Pantani into their hearts and minds. And when he won the Giro and the Tour the same year in 1998, he just exploded in popularity. And there's a good look at him right there, and you can see right in the center of your screen, in the white jersey with the rainbow stripes, Mario Cipollini, the 2 biggest stars in Italian cycling today.
Just looking down there on the back forkstay there of the riders, Paul. Little white boxes are the transponders they're using these days on the Tour.
They're using transponders which are actually linked to a GPS system, which gives us not only an idea of where the riders are out on the course, but it also is used as a timing mechanism. Once they cross the line, it gives us a very fast result of the position of everybody in the main field. The only problem with that is if there is a bike change on the run-in towards the finish, as can be the case if a rider crashes and has to swap bikes with a teammate, the result that we are given is the teammate's bicycle crossing the line. And sometimes that can cause a quick problem in the relay of the results that come through, but it certainly has improved the speed that we get the results after the finish of the stages.
Yeah, it's a system they use a lot in the big cycle tours, they call them, in South Africa, where you can get as many as 38,000 participants, believe it or not, and each one receives an individual time for the route because of these transponders. Best time, of course, wins the day's first prize. So we're looking down on the world champion there, Mario Cipollini. This, as we approach the Inter-Giro competition, a good time to show you the situation. DiBiase is leading this by 17 seconds over Nausdutz, who was the first day's winner, and Aggiano in third place. Now, there's a bonus of 30 seconds for the first man over the line, and that comes off his time. So if Nausdutz, for example, was to win, he would eradicate his 17 seconds deficit and could well reclaim the sky blue jersey as leader of that classification. All will be revealed soon because we're approaching the town today of Castello, and when we get there we'll see who takes out the Inter-Giro. We'll be back very shortly as the Giro d'Italia rolls on. Back to the Giro d'Italia. Well, it's all action here now as we approach the Inter-Giro, and we're looking at the team of Factor from Denmark trying to help Magnus Bagsted up for it, but as the challenge here at the front by Arvidsson, it looks as though the Dinardi team are also interfering, and not surprisingly, because they have the sky blue jersey of race leader Moreno DiBiase, and also Elio Aggiano, who is in third place, and Nausdutz is certain to also try to break in. He's wearing a bright orange jersey. You can just see him peeping in at the bottom of our picture.
Well, there were 5 riders from Factor right in that long line there. The 5th man will be Magnus Bagsted. You can see the light blue jersey there in 6th position. Well, that is the leader of this competition, Mariano DiBiase. He's a very good sprinter himself. You can see moving up to Kolpak also. There's a bit of confusion there. A few moments ago, you could see the orange jerseys trying to move in. That was CCC Polsat. They've got a man called Andreas Nauduz. He's in second place in this classification. But for the moment, Phil, this is a very serious leader by Team Factor in a competition which over the last couple of years has been taken very seriously by a lot of the teams.
It has indeed. Massimo Strazza has been the winner over the last couple of years, but he's not riding the Giro this time around. And about 2.5 kilometres from the line, Bob, and there's 3 teams clearly laid down the gauntlet here.
Formaggio Pinzolo is leading out for DiBiase. In fact, they're doing a huge lead out for Bagsted. He's a pretty fair sprinter himself, but you can see right on his wheel is DiBiase. It's just going to be a good little sprint. This is almost like the finish of a bike race. They're taking this very seriously. And there you can see Pataki in the purple Ciclamino jersey getting into a little bit of the action. And now here comes the sprint. The line must be very close.
The line is very close, 75 metres, so we had a little bit of a false information coming at us there. They're right on the line here now. Bagsted has got it, I think Bagsted may have got it, and it interfered there by the rider from Française des Jeux. And I must say that's Jimmy Casper, and I'm surprised that Jimmy was getting involved in that.
I'm not quite sure why Jimmy Casper got involved there, except to maybe put a few euros into his back pocket, but it was very close there between Bagsted and Jimmy Casper, and Moreno DiBiase didn't really seem to have the power. Let's look at it from above here right now. That is Bagsted in the red and black jersey there. Big acceleration, DiBiase up alongside him, and there's the acceleration on the right-hand side coming from Jimmy Casper. The lunge for the line, I think, will go to the man on the left-hand side, Bagsted, but it will be very close, and that will in fact bring Magnus Bagsted a lot closer in the overall classification if he gets that 30 seconds. He started 24 seconds off in this competition. There's 30 seconds for first, 24 seconds for second, and 18 seconds bonus for third place. So you have to be a bit of a mathematician to figure out who is leading in this instance.
This is without doubt, even for us so-called experts, the most complicated competition ever invented in the sport of cycling.
I'm going to predict DiBiase will retain his jersey today.
I'll go with you, Bob.
The rest of the race is up for grabs. That was a great sprint by Bagsted there. He's a very powerful rider. They really want this competition. The whole team involved in the lead out for about 10 kilometers. That takes the pressure off of Garzelli's team, the Vini Calderola boys, not having to do any of the tempo throughout that. I can't believe they're racing so hard for the intermediate sprints jersey, but they're taking it very seriously in the bike race here. Now there's maybe a chance for a little bit of a breakaway because that was such a hard lead out.
Well, this is one reason, Phil, why the Inter-Giro has been created by the race organisation. In years gone by, the Giro over the first 100, 150 kilometres used to be a real long piano session, then would speed up towards the end. What happens with the Inter-Giro is 1 or 2 teams take a very serious interest. They pick up the pacemaking, and then all of a sudden, after a 10, 15 kilometre lead out, they slow down, and it's then that the counterattacks have a big chance of succeeding. And there is one just starting to form off the front end of the main field right now. There are about 5 riders going clear. It's up to the team now of Stefano Garzelli to coordinate themselves on the front, nail back this small counter-attack, and then hope there's a bit of a respite for the next few kilometres.
It's always a good time to have a go for a breakaway from the pack here, just after they're recovering from a sharp sprint finish like that one. We think it was Bagstead, Casper and DiBiase in that order, which will mean that DiBiase will keep his lead in that sky blue jersey competition for another day, but Bagstead is closing the gap and looking good every day. So remember, this is a day, it should be a day for the sprinters. We've got the only hill of the day behind us. Now, we haven't given you the result of it yet because simply no one is confirming the result. We do believe that Constantino Zabala was the first over the top. Nobody knows who finished second or third, and that was the first climb soon after the beginning today. Now, if Gonzalez has not finished second, he will have lost his lead in the King of the Mountains to Constantino Zabala. But it's all a mystery. For some reason, the organisation this year are not giving us the results at all of the early mountain races. But there is the result confirmed as we saw it, which means that DiBiase will keep his sky blue jersey and he can ride in that again tomorrow.
A quick calculation, Phil, there will actually put Magnus Bagstead into second place in that competition right now, just 12 seconds behind. So that's going to be seriously contested over the next few days. And I feel for Team Factor, who came here as a small team, really looking to try and show themselves off, they've actually been very present, haven't they, Bob, at the front end of the main field. And to lead a competition like that, I would think that Team Factor can then say to the Giro d'Italia, well, thank you very much. We have come to your race and we haven't actually dishonoured it at all.
No, they've been doing a great Giro so far. They've been in almost every breakaway. And when your team starts to go in the breaks, eventually you get the opportunity. And when you've been so competitive throughout the race, it's a little bit easier to win the stages. Also, Scott Sunderland had a pretty good day on the roads yesterday himself, climbing most of the way with Marco Pantani and finishing quite well in the yesterday's stage. So Team Factor having a great Giro so far.
We're looking here at the team leader here of the Landbau Credit team from Belgium, Sergei Adviev. He's gone away in this little leading group, which is just trying to make ground. The white jerseyed rider there is Carlos da Cruz of the Festina team, Française de Jeu. As we pull back, it looks as though the Greyhounds are on the attack here. The peloton, well, it's not affecting the overall lead. The boys in the break are a bit too far behind the pink jersey in overall time, so he won't initially chase them down. But the sprinters teams will certainly want to monitor this at about 47 kilometres to go. The win in the Intergiro for Magnus Bagstead.
You might not take it to the top of the Matterhorn, but it's so rugged, so versatile, so comfortable. It's nice to know you could.
Here's your blanket, Robert.
Thanks, Mom.
Introducing the all-terrain Minute Bed Sport from Arrow. It's loaded with extras, like coil construction for superior comfort, heavy-gauge PVC for long-lasting toughness, and an exclusive hands-free rechargeable pump that goes from 0 to ready in less than a minute, anywhere. The Minute Bed Sport is built for the road, but it's equally at home under your own roof. Minute Bed Sport comes with a luxurious plush exterior, high-powered motor, and built-in pillow, all standard. It deflates in 15 seconds, stores away quickly in the bonus carry bag, and right now, it's priced to move.
This is like the SUV of airbeds.
Accept no substitutes. Call now to order your Minute Bed Sport or visit our website for a retailer near you. Minute Bed Sport from Arrow. The comfortable, versatile, all-terrain bed in a minute.
Hey.
The unexpected Captain Morgan Original Spiced Rum.
Turtle Wax knows how hard it is to fit washing and waxing into a busy weekend schedule. So we created new Jet Wash and Jet Wax. Turtle Wax Jet Wash powers off dirt and grime quickly and easily. Switch to Turtle Wax Jet Wax and you've got long-lasting Turtle Wax shine and protection in just minutes. It looks like you spent your day working on your car instead of sitting on your, lounge chair. New Turtle Wax Jet Wash and Jet Wax. And for shine and protection on vinyl and rubber, get Turtle Wax 2001 Super Protectant Sprayer Wipes.
A more powerful V8 engine. More distinctive styling. 368 improvements in all. The 2003 Discovery. It's a whole new way to see the world. From Land Rover, the most well-traveled vehicles on Earth. Nicely equipped from $399 a month. Complimentary scheduled maintenance included.
Well, welcome back to the Giro d'Italia. The breakaway is trying to run away from the field now, having just made its move as they came through the Intergiro special sprint, and they were at 41 kilometres from the finish. Now, the judges have taken a close look at the photo finish camera since they gave the result Bagstedt winning over Kasper. And as you can see, they've gone the other way now. In fact, they're saying Kasper was first over the line, Bagstedt second, and Moreno Di Biase gets third. So that's good news for Di Biase, because Bagstedt will not be quite as close as he was. He loses 6 seconds there in time bonus. So these are the leaders for you: Zanotti, Da Cruz, Adjano, Gutierrez, Adyev and Marini. And Adyev is the leader, is the best placed in this breakaway, but even so he's still almost 9 3/4 minutes behind, so he's not going to cause too much attraction from the race leadership and Stefano Garzelli.
This is a very nice situation for Stefano Garzelli right now, because none of these guys are really a danger at all in the overall classification, and what it should do is shift the responsibility of the chase across to the teams of Alessandro Patacchi, Mario Cipollini and of course Robbie McEwen. McEwen, who's already admitted he wants to leave this race on stage 13 but would like to get himself another stage victory under the belt if he can. This is the back end of the main field, and this is the Gregario's job. You can see here the man we're looking at just at the back here, Marcel Strauss from Gerolsteiner, losing one of his bottles there. His job has been to go back to the team car and load up with as much liquid as possible and drag it up to the team leaders. And it's always, Bob, a pretty precarious job when you have to go back to the team car. We've seen riders putting on their backs 4, 5, 6 bottles of water. That can be 5 or 6 kilos extra, which is 10, 12 pounds. And it's a bit difficult sometimes if you've got that load on board and you're trying to ride up through the main field. I've actually, on occasions, thrown the bottles away and told the team leader I couldn't get back to the car.
That's a good tactic. I just kept trying. And if you get to a hill when you're carrying an extra 10 or 15 kilos, it's not very much fun at all. And I think that's what happened to Strauss there. He was lucky one of them popped out. Otherwise, he'd have a huge load. Here's a replay of it. They like to see where the bottles are flying in the Giro sometimes this year, and we have sometimes they've been using a microscopic camera to shift up to where the peloton is and show the bottles flying all over the place. Guys throw them off and they come back into the group and have caused crashes in the past. So maybe they're trying to instruct the future pros of the sport in the proper etiquette of discarding your bottle, and having it pop out of your pocket is probably not it.
These are the 6 leaders for you. 22 seconds, so they're coming back a little bit. We've had a 34-second advantage. They are working well together, all on rival teams. Lambau Credit, Française des Jeux, Kelme, Tenex, Dinardi and Formaggi. But in fact, at this minute in time, they're helping each other. They're joining in pacemaking, sharing the pace to try and pull away from the common enemy, which is the big pack. There's the French rider Da Cruz going through in the white. The only French team in the race is Française des Jeux. In fact, the only French team we've had in the race for a couple of years.
Well, they've actually followed this race several times, and I think Marc Madio, the team manager of Française des Jeux, likes to bring his young riders here to learn a little bit about the sport. There's no better way, I don't think, of upgrading your knowledge of the sport and how to handle yourself in a 3-week tour than coming to a race like this, where as a French team they don't have that much pressure on their shoulders to perform well. Obviously they want to win stages, but it gives the young riders, Bob, a bit of a crash course really in how to handle yourself in a 3-week bike race.
And Sandy Cassar, being one of the new and upcoming stars of France, he is here in this bike race. It's great to see him. He's not racing great so far, but I think he'll be able to use this race to get in really good fitness for the Tour de France. He started out last year's season flying, was second in Paris-Nice, and started to be lauded as one of the future stars of French cycling. Kind of tapered off this spring so far, but I think the Giro, if he can ride through it nice and steady, have no crashes and not get sick, he'll be really fit for the Tour, and you might see him make a big result at some point during this year's Tour de France come July.
We see now, Phil, that it's the Lotto team coming to the front to help out with the pacemaking, a complete change in the front end of the main field. It is the sprinters right now who've decided to overtake the responsibility, and if you look at the back end of the main field, rather surprising to see the complete squadra of Marco Pantani. Now, up until now, we've seen Pantani's team riding very much on the front. I think yesterday that performance of his, although I thought was a reasonable performance, has really taken a bit of a blow to his morale.
Yes, he wasn't happy with his riding. He said he was not strong enough. Other riders rode better, and he still hasn't got the power to answer the accelerations, which is the secret of being a great climber, is you can vary your pace on these steep climbs, and Marco couldn't find the good old days. Anyway, we'll take another short break. Rejoin us very shortly. Back with the leaders here, and we're about to get some idea where we are. 30 kilometres to go down below us as the peloton are not very far behind. The last check we got, well, there we are. They're saying 33 seconds now at 30 kilometres from the finish, and it is not surprisingly the Lotto rider here would like a little help, but the other rider wasn't too keen to come by.
Well, it's not really the responsibility anymore of Vinnie Calderillo Sidemek team to do the pacemaking on the front end of the peloton. They now know that it's the sprinters want to have their glory, so it's really the responsibility of those teams to come forward. And here we get a chance to see the squadra of Marco Pantani at the back. I think Bob maybe just taking a back seat for a couple of days. He knows really that when we go up to stage 12, up to the summit of Zoncolan, he has to come out and try and show off his abilities once more. He did suffer an awful lot yesterday, but I thought, considering the amount of time and the problems he's had over the last couple of years, that was a fair performance.
I absolutely agree. He doesn't have the racing miles in his legs to expect to be competitive in an event like yesterday, a stage like yesterday, and he needs to ride himself into shape, and there's no reason why he couldn't improve throughout the Giro. He did a decent ride, I agree with you. He's still 4 minutes 41 seconds down on GC, and that's quite a bit. And oddly enough, the first time the road pointed upward in the Giro d'Italia, it's come down to almost a two-man bike race. Francesco Casagrande also losing a lot of time yesterday. He's now 3 minutes and 11 seconds down on GC. That's not the type of time gaps you want just after the first acceleration in the mountains, but Simone was so powerful that he just blew the GC battle apart, and Garzelli was the only rider that could stay with him besides Andrea Noe, who was also looking quite good. He's 44 seconds down on GC. He hasn't been a huge threat on GC in the Giro before, and he's also, during the latter part, the twilight years of his career, one would assume, into his mid-30s. He's been a great pro for a long time. A stalwart of the MAPE program was Noe, but I think that it's going to be a battle between Garzelli and Simone throughout the rest of this bike race. Pantani needs to keep riding, though, if he's going to expect to get back in shape and be competitive at the top level of cycling again.
Well, what you were saying there about Andrea Noe, I tend to disagree just a little bit. He's, in fact, let's not forget, finished 4th and 6th overall in the Giro d'Italia when he's actually been working for other riders. So he is the kind of rider who this year, for the first time in his career, has a free rein. And I think we saw that yesterday. He was dropped a couple of times, but courageously pulled himself back up to the two men we've talked about as the obvious favourites for the bike race, Garzelli and Simone. So watch out for a surprise from Andrea Noe when we go into the consistent mountains. And I think what could always change the men at the top end of the leaderboard, Phil, is if we get some really bad weather going through the Dolomites.
Oh, absolutely, and I would say, rest assured, we will at some stage see rain. We haven't seen any yet, a little bit of drizzle, but no serious rain. But we've left the beautiful, hot, sunny far south of Italy now, as we're coursing right up the centre of the mainland into Tuscany today. A beautiful area where many of the top bike riders live and train during their off-season, and it's an area which really loves its sport. There's the lineup again for you. Not the big names in the world of cycling. The big winners here, Da Cruz and Adjiano. This is Adjiano on the left of our picture, and that's the Ukrainian rider coming through, Aviev, at the moment. He's best placed in this breakaway, 45th in the classification, 9 minutes and 43 seconds behind overall. And that's why Garzelli's teams here are not doing more than they feel they have to, just playing their part as the domestiques of the race leader, because here we have the riders coming through of Mario Cipollini. It's their job now to try and close this gap down. The same for the next man coming through. His team captain is Robbie McEwen, the Australian sprinter, who's won 2 stages but lost one on for bad sprinting, so he's got 1 win under his belt so far. He's scheduled to leave the race on the 13th day because he's going to prepare for the Tour de France. He did the same thing last year. He's got about 3 shots, I think, before the 13th day of this race in which he could possibly win a stage.
And that's Robbie being very assumptuous, I think, because he's got to get himself up to the summit of the Zoncolan, which is an unbelievably difficult climb, and that climb comes on stage 12. I wonder if we should read anything into the possible departure of Giovanni Lombardi from Mario Cipollini's team next year. A lot of people are discussing the possibility of signing him up during the transfer season. He's not very happy, I don't think, with Mario Cipollini at the moment, and in fact, strangely strangely enough, at the Giro, the signing in procedure is the whole team goes in to sign in at the same time. This morning, Mario Cipollini signed in with the rest of the team, and Giovanni Lombardi was absent from the lineup. Yesterday, it was the other way around. Cipollini didn't go up with the whole team, and Giovanni Lombardi was there. So I don't know if we should read anything into that, but up until now, Giovanni Lombardi, in the finishes of these races, has been completely professional and tried to look after Mario Cipollini and set him up.
Well, it's the sort of thing, knowing that team, they'll do just for the publicity and let the press notice and write, and they get the name of their team in the papers more than anybody else, even when they're not winning stages, because they're a very publicity-conscious setup. I remember Giovanni Lombardi in his final days as an amateur when he was disqualified from a race in a town called Grafton, way up in the north of Sydney, about 300 miles north of Sydney on the eastern seaboard of Australia. And he really did spit the dummy when he got disqualified for bad sprinting, Bob, and he said he'd never come back to Australia again, he'd never come to the race again. Well, what the Australians say, that's fine by us, mate.
More chances for Robbie McEwen at that point.
Yes.
I'm not exactly sure what spitting the dummy is, but I'm sure it's not good.
It's an Australian expression meaning you're slightly upset with the organisation of the event.
Ah, okay.
You know, like when a baby.
Like when you were in Cardiff and you pulled your foot off the
let's
pedal
not talk
and you
about
lost the
that at
stage
all.
of the Tour of Britain. Remember that?
I didn't threaten that I would never go back to England, though,
No,
because
that's
it's
true.
such a lovely
That's only
place.
because you like the beer, though.
It wasn't the fault of the officials at all. It was my own fault. I pulled my foot out of the pedal. And I think I could have won the sprint with one leg, but the chain fell off also, and I couldn't even sprint with one leg. So I was really upset there. It was about to be my first win as a professional, and it all went out the window in the last 20 yards of the bike race, and Paul Hagedorn was able to come around me and beat me in that race.
Phil, I think Bob's been watching Monty Python too much.
Unbelievable working with you guys. Well, here we go. We're about 25 kilometres from the finish, and still the sprinters are sensing victory, but they've got to catch 6 men before they win the day. We'll be back. Beck, we're looking at the peloton here now as time is running out for the sprinters. If they don't wipe out the breakaway, they've closed in dramatically, are only seconds behind those 6 men now, but as we speak, one man has just gone clear of the leaders. We think it's Sergei Avyayev of the Lambau Credit Team. Seems to be trying to move clear on his own.
Well, that's a last-minute move, really, for him. We're looking at the rear end of the main peloton, and it is Avyayev who's gone off the front. He realises that they're about to get caught, but on the front end of the main field, you can see Lotto Domo, the team from Belgium, are really whipping up the pacemaking, with a lot of help coming from Alessandro Petacchi's team. They must have an awful lot of confidence in their sprinter, because he's had 3 stage wins so far in this year's Giro d'Italia. But, Bob, this is what I would put down for a possible candidature for one of your Knucklehead of the Year awards.
Knucklehead of the day, at least, most certainly. He hasn't even... There he's turned around now, and he realizes the whole peloton is right on his wheel, so now is the time to shut down the effort. Fossa Bortolo maybe stinging a little bit from both Gonzalez and Frigo being dropped so emphatically on yesterday's stage. They want to win a stage. Dario Frigo 7 minutes 33 seconds behind on GC already, and Aitor Gonzalez, the winner of last year's Vuelta a España, is now almost 7 minutes down on our leader Stefano Garzelli. And Avyayev, he's still up in the front of the bike race now. He's been professional just since last year, but he's being chased by one of the best teams in the business, the Fossa Bortolo squad.
First time ride in the Giro, wants to make an impression, at least for television. Fossa Bortolo know now they're racing really for one man after yesterday's mountain stage, and that is the sprinter Alessandro Petacchi. He will want this stage win today to increase his overall lead in the Ciclamino jersey for the race on points. That's the competition for the most consistent daily finisher, and Alessandro Petacchi has 3 wins so far, so he's won 75 points there for those 3 wins, 25 points a time. This is the only survivor now. The other 5 men, we didn't actually see them caught, but rest assured they've been wiped out, because this rider only has a scant 12 seconds, and then we should be all together for the big showdown. Nice little show of defiance. I'm sure the sprinters' domestiques behind are cursing him, because they're having to work very hard now as we come up towards the 20 kilometres to go. It's only 12 miles, and he's just checked over his shoulder to see where they are.
He can probably almost feel the bated breath of the teams of the sprinters on his shoulders there, Bob, because they will be, as Phil has said, cursing this man, because they know they're going to catch him, but they're just prolonging the agony.
He's prolonging the agony of the breakaway a little bit. He's going to be swept up before the finish. You need about 3 minutes, maybe more, in this day and age when the whole peloton is charging into the finish line, to expect to have a chance to win a stage when you're on your own like that. Especially, he was also contributing to the breakaway quite a bit throughout that little escapade, and now being chased by the Domina Vacanze team on the front of the peloton for Mario Cipollini. We'll see if he can win another one today, I think. I don't believe there'll be any breakaways as we get closer to the finish line, and it'll be a big bunch gallop to the line.
Well, Phil, in fact, it should be a pretty good sprint for the sprinters on the run in towards the finish. As we look at Adviev here, we're still a 17-second advantage. With about 3 kilometres to go, there is a slight corner, but it's fairly straight on the run in. There is one dangerous section in the last 3 kilometres at around about 2.5 kilometres to go, where there are a series of left and right-hand bends. And then once we get to the final 1.6 kilometres, which is a mile, they will then face a long, straight drag finish. And that may well be the chance that Mario Cipollini has got to equal that record.
Well, that was Tilly Marichal of the Belgian Lotto team. Now, let's not forget that sprinting is indeed an art, but to be there for the sprint, you also have to survive the bad days. Paul Sherwen tells us a little bit more about that.
The mountains may be beautiful, but not if you're a sprinter. Sprinters are nearly always bigger, stronger men than the climbers, just like Mario Cipollini, who has inherited a bit of extra weight in order to have the speed on the flat stages. That extra weight is a real handicap when you go uphill for 10 or 15 miles. But how do the sprinters survive the mountains? As Bob Roll will tell you, they'll scream piano, piano at the bottom of every climb, which is usually associated in the Giro d'Italia with gruppetto. They try to organise themselves into a group of non-climbers in order to work together and stay inside the elimination time limit on each mountain stage. You'll often see the gruppetto finishing the stage 15, 20, 30 minutes behind the mountain stage winner. The one thing that keeps them going on the mountain stages is the thought that as soon as the road becomes flat again, the sprinters can reign supreme on their own terrain. The flat days between every mountain peak.
But for Cipollini to attempt to win today, they've first got to catch this one rider, Avdyev. He's, last time checked, 10 seconds in front, and if our camera could just swing a little bit to the left, I think we might well see him, because the peloton is absolutely flying over the ground at the moment. Let's have a little look up the road there. And there he is, down there. So it looks as though we are closing in on him.
Well, he's doing a pretty impressive ride just to survive off the front end of the main field, because I'm fairly certain the average speed we're looking at in the bunch right now is approximately 35 miles an hour. There's no major organisation right now. Everyone taking a brief respite, I would say, Bob, because they feel now that they can catch that lone leader on any opportunity that they want to.
Yes, and also they know that any breakaways would be chased immediately by the sprinters' team. So a little bit of a truce in the peloton right now. You don't often see that so close to the finish line, but it's been a very fast stage, and I'm surprised at how hard Garzelli's team, the Vini Caldirola boys, are riding at the front of the peloton. I don't think that was absolutely called for them to ride quite so hard. He's going to need those teammates throughout the rest of these 2 weeks to be fresh on a day-to-day basis. Putting them on the front for a couple of 100 kilometers today is definitely going to take some energy out of their legs for later on. He's riding great, however. Stefano Garzelli is right there where he needs to be so far. Yesterday was a beautiful example of two very different climbing styles also. Garzelli way back on the saddle, putting all the power into a big gear, and Simone a little bit more upright, a little bit further forward on the bicycle, breathing easy, pedaling a small gear, reminiscent a little bit of a climber from the United States called Lance Armstrong.
Well, just at the back there, the man we're looking at, 177, was Oscar Pozzi, the man who decked it yesterday on the descent tour, and he went away over the summit of the final third category climb on the day and rather unceremoniously locked up his back wheel and slid off. And today he's just trying to get himself through the stage. Always very difficult, Phil, when you have a crash like that, because for 2 or 3 days the body really does tend to tighten up, and the fact that those wounds take several days to heal makes sleeping at night not a great deal of fun.
No, absolutely not. And riders often being forced to sleep without any clothes over the bed because they have to keep those wounds open to the air in the hope they'll dry up a little bit quicker, because there's no days off in any big stage race. Every day you must arrive inside a time limit based on the percentage of the winner's time. Otherwise you're stopped anyway. And of course you must finish every stage to continue. We're looking at the one man out in front. He is dangling desperately close to being caught, but he hasn't been caught yet. And the next banner that will come his way will be 15 kilometres to go. At 15 kilometres from the finish, the leader in fact has inched out a couple of more metres over the field. He's just passed under that 15 kilometre to go banner. Avdyev But the peloton will probably feel they've got everything under control, because 15 kilometres, about 9 from... In fact, that looks like he's just been picked up down the right there.
He's just been picked up with the acceleration. I think when he went under the 15 kilometres to go banner, Phil, he just realised he was going to get caught. He sat up and waited for the main field. There's Marco Pantani, looking very comfortable at the wrong end of the peloton. In fact, he's moved up pretty rapidly. Well, that's a surprise. We've seen him, Bob, for the last 20 kilometres, sitting at the back. I cannot at all understand the tactics of Marco Pantani. He's using his team in the stages when really he should be saving them.
Yes, and the opposite is true. When he needs his teammates, they're not able to be up there because they're doing a rather idiotic maneuver like we're seeing right now. This is not the job of his team. They don't have any sprinters here. They're not trying to win this stage today, most certainly. They need to conserve their energy, and it's my supposition that he's given up the ghost for the GC, and he's just trying to get a little bit of publicity for his Mercatoni Uno sponsor by putting his riders on the front of the finale of these stages. And I don't think it's going to serve them very well throughout this Giro d'Italia. Saeco, on the other hand, want to keep their man, Gilberto Simoni, who is perhaps the strongest climber in this bike race, out of danger and at the front of the bike race. Marco Pantani, he continues to mystify. And when he can't speak with his legs, he lets his teammates and his mouth do all the talking.
Well, that's his team right now, Mercatoni Uno. He's the leader. He's got some very strong men in there with a man like Massimo Codol, Roberto Conti, who's been a professional since time began, Fabiano Fontanelli, another old bike rider, who is the kind of man who could create the surprise win. I've seen him win some very clever bike races in his time, but really I feel mystified as to why Marco Pantani is using his team on the flat stages like this, Phil.
Well, if the two experts don't understand, I'm on a loser here, but I can see Roberto Conti in second place at the moment. This is the team now of the man in second position, Simoni, the captain, with the 1 at the end of his number. He has some great riders like Fabio Sacchi, number 152. Sabaliauskas is also very high up overall and proven to be a very good climber alongside Simeoni. And the other riders in the team will tend to work for him as much as they can during the race. By the way, Damiano Cunego in that team, he's the youngest rider in the race at just 22 years of age. That's a big responsibility to come onto the team of the prospective Giro winner and have to be expected to work for a man like Simoni. So the boys in red on the left, Marco Pantani's team puzzling the experts on the right, and I see the pink jersey of Garzelli just watching proceedings down there at the moment. Watch out for a jersey which is very similar to the pink. It's the Ciclamino jersey. I suppose it's mauve or a shade of purple, but that is the jersey we expect to see penetrate the front of the race in the last 500 metres, because it's worn by Alessandro Petacchi, the big sprinter.
I tell you what, Phil, this is absolutely crazy watching Marco Pantani use his team to the maximum on a flat stage. There's a very good shot of those transponders we were talking about just a little earlier on. It's not surprising, though, to see Gilberto Simoni keeping his team on the front end of the main field, keeping himself to the front of the peloton, because it's always on these run-ins that we've had some pretty shady crashes over the last couple of days, and Gilberto Simoni does not want to lose any time. Apparently the other day, when the time gap was split off the front end of the main field, about 8 or 9 riders going clear, and Garzelli was in the front group on that occasion, it was supposedly one of Garzelli's teammates, Balducci, Bob, who sat up in the corner. Pretty clever tactic so close to the finish.
Well, he looked around, he saw the pace was so high that by sitting up there and letting his teammate Garzelli to go up the road, nobody else was able to come around, because the sprint had begun at that point and a gap opened up and it extended to 8 seconds, which is a lot in a bike race and has made a huge difference in the Giro.
Well, that's a very fast, quick-thinking professional who can make a decision like that on the ground. Moving to the front, you can see Mario Cipollini and his zebra-clad team looking very attentive for the moment. I think he will be looking for the position of Alessandro Petacchi, and I wonder if Cipollini may well change his tactics, Phil, and try and come off the wheel of Alessandro Petacchi in the sprint today. There's Marco Pantani close to the front end of the main field. As we get closer to the finish, the front end of the peloton will get themselves much more organised.
Well, things not working out well for Mario, but he's had a few dress rehearsals. He's had, I think it's 2 or 3 second places, I can't remember now, but he's had a couple of second places certainly, and beaten by millimetres. So if he gets it just right, then he will get this elusive record equaling 41st stage. And it'd be a great place to get it here, because Cipollini himself won here in 1997 in Arezzo. And in 1928, Alfredo Binder also won here. So wouldn't it be nice to take the record, or at least equal the record, in this town today? Well, the field are still organised. There's nobody trying to break them up. They're coming to the finish, fairly routine. High speed now to stop anybody slipping off the front. They're running towards the 10 kilometre to go banner, which will take them into the last 6 miles, of course. And you can see by the shape of the peloton there, the wind is probably, what little wind there is coming more or less head on now, slightly over to their right shoulder perhaps. This is the tail of the bunch, the Coda del Gruppo. And the boys from Factor, their work is done for the day, trying to get Backstead that win in the Intergiro. They didn't quite do it. He finished second in the sprint, but he continues to challenge in that Intergiro competition.
Well, one thing to remember about Mario Cipollini, he is a great champion. He's won almost 200 professional bike races, and over the last 3 years he has always come away from the Giro d'Italia with a stage win. He's battling this time, but he certainly will not give up. There's Marco Pantani riding at the front end of the peloton, and an orange jersey moving forward there, Phil. That's the Panaria squad, and maybe they're thinking about a win for their rather raucous sprint finisher, Graham Brown.
He's been nearly there a few times, just penetrating the top 6 on the line, but he hasn't yet shown us the turn of speed that we know he can produce. Maybe today will produce a different finish for all of these men who are just missing out. We'll know pretty soon now. It's not far to 10 kilometres to go, but we'll take another short break. Rejoin us as we head towards the finish. Welcome back. A little luck here at the Giro d'Italia on this moto, just under 80 kilometres an hour. That means these boys are racing on 48 miles an hour right now, Paul.
That's some pretty serious speed. It's a very fast run into the finish right now. In fact, over the last 10 kilometres, it's slightly downhill for 6 of them. Then with about 4 kilometres to go, it's reasonably flat. So we'll be looking now at speeds, as you said, Phil, of approaching 50 miles an hour. The sprint, we could see riders touching that as well. There you can see the organisation starting to come at the front end of the main field. The yellow jersey, Garzelli, still very comfortable at the front end of the main field. Mario Cipollini looking to try and equal the record here of Alfredo Binder with 41 all-time Giro stage victories. He's been trying to get that record for the last few days, and look at the names. There are hardly any names still in activity with more than 20 victories. Eddie Merckx down there in 5th place with 25 wins. I, for one, am a great Mario Cipollini supporter and would love to see him get that stage victory. He's got 3 chances over the next 4 days, and I'm sure he realises that. And I still back up what I said a little earlier, Phil, as we go here inside of 5 kilometres to go. Mario Cipollini over the last 3 years has not come to the Giro d'Italia without winning a single stage.
Absolutely not, and he got his best ever score last year when he won 6 of them. He started winning stages in the Giro back in 1989. And it's remarkable here in the year 2003, this man is still winning stages, at least we hope he is, by the end of this Giro d'Italia. Well, the boys are moving them pawns forward now. The domestiques are setting the pace, but they're looking now for the actual king of the sprint. Oh, a little touch of shoulders there. Just a friendly nudge, I think, on the shoulder of Matteo Tosato, as Cipollini tries to force his way and hold his position.
Well, any other normal, sane person in the world would have slammed on the brakes right there. Not Super Mario Cipollini, just leans his shoulder right into the guy from Fausto Bortolo, pushes him out of the way and gets right back on the wheel of Giovanni Lombardi. That's incredible riding. It shows how fearless these athletes are. And when you see the speed and you put that against the fear factor, it's absolutely amazing. I love these sprints. They're so exciting. See if Cipollini looks like he's fired up today for this sprint.
Well, we're coming to the flatter part of the course right now, just coming up to the 4 kilometre to go banner. Then it's fairly straightforward, the running today, except that little chicane at around about 2.5 kilometres to go, with 2 very dramatic little corners these riders have to negotiate. Still Marco Pantani very much at the front end of the main peloton. You can see the Seiko riders looking over their shoulders. This is a very dangerous moment for the leaders of the bike race, because they do not want to get involved in any crashes. You can very easily lose yourself 30 or 40 seconds. Garzelli there in the pink, slipping back now. He doesn't want to get involved in too much of the activities at the front end. You can see Mario Cipollini there in the white jersey, and right on his wheel is the Ciclamina jersey of Alessandro Patacchi, the man who has been so consistent since the start of this year's Giro. They are picking up the pacemaking, and I tell you what, Team Factor are looking for themselves to try and get a win, I think, for either Frankie Hoy or maybe even Magnus Backstead.
Well, I think possibly Backstead. Hoy was sitting last man not long ago, but he may well have moved forward. I see Julian Wynne just at the bottom of our picture, that white jersey, red, white and blue stripes. He's the British road racing champion. That's the jersey that tells us that. He is on the same team as Backstead on Factor. And we're watching here, Bob, at a real fantastic approach to the line. They are absolutely flying.
The Domina Vacanze team, like they've done throughout this Giro d'Italia, right on the front of the peloton. No other team able to match them in a consistent manner like that. You can see the lineup there of the zebra-striped riders. Ongerato, Colombo, Lombardi, Benatti, Ongerato, Scarponi, Schiera, Secchiari, they're all in there. Cipollini, the main man, sitting on the last bit. You can see the Furlan from the Alessio team moving up onto his shoulder, and right tacked onto his wheel is Alessandro Patacchi.
Alongside there, Mario Cipollini, Robbie McEwen, they're all queuing up. Look at that. Everybody wants the back wheel of Mario Cipollini. He is the ideal lead-out man to have because he starts the sprint so far out with such huge power. But the other riders this year seem to have got the jump on him. Look at that now. There's a battle going on there between Patacchi and Robbie McEwen. They want that wheel now, just moving up. He, in fact, was decked a couple of days ago. He's moving in front of Cipollini again. That's the man in the orange jersey. Cipollini will not like that at all. And if he starts to get bothered with getting onto the wheel of Giovanni Lombardi, I feel he'll get a nice little shoulder for Super Mario.
2 kilometres to go now. That's about 2 minutes and 10 seconds at the speed these riders are going. We might even get inside 2 minutes, judging by the speed now. Well, the team of Cipollini, once again, as they did the other day, have got it right. They've got all the team men on the front. They've got Cipollini on the whip end. Now, can he come off the wheels this time and make it 41?
Well, they have to really get themselves into the frame of mind right now to suffer as they have done on many occasions in the past. It has been a worry for them because Cipollini has not been able to finish off, but he's acting like a man who is going through the role of the man going to set up the sprint. Look at the battle here for Cipollini's wheel. Excuse me now, just I'm coming by. I'm the leader of the points competition. This is really what sprinting is all about. This is the best part of the sport. You have to take risks. You touch your brakes at a moment like this and you will find yourself at the back end of the peloton. The speed is on. There's the last kilometre. We're inside 1,000 metres right now, and we will be looking, Phil, at speeds of around about 35, 40 miles an hour. Cipollini's men are once again in control.
Well, we'll just move our referee out of the way. He's trying to move everybody else so he gets a good look at this one, because there is a little bit of aggressiveness in the sprinters today. They're licking the lips, they're scenting blood, as still it looks as though Cipollini running out of men, as he should be at 500 metres to go. He's got 2 riders now to catapult him to the line and win 41, but the men he fears most have also got him in his sights. Locked right in behind there is his danger man, Robbie McEwen, followed by Patacchi, followed by Bagstead, followed by Nasdaq's, probably the 4 best finishers right there. And now the sprint starts. This is the last throw at the line. Now, there goes Patacchi to the right. Cipollini, has he got it this time? As our camera, we don't see where Patacchi is. Cipollini, Patacchi, Patacchi, Cipollini. Mario on the line has done it. Well. Win 41, Bob. I'm glad you didn't feel lucky for him today, because it worked.
Awesome sprint. He didn't give up. He went out in the wind. Lombardi swung off. Boom! Straight to the line, and he had the power. Patacchi, though, barely missing that. Mario Cipollini, and look at the melee at the finish line. They know that a modern record has been set, and this is a real milestone in worldwide cycling.
It's not very often, Phil, you see Cipollini go down on his handlebars after the finish like that. He really pushed himself into oxygen debt. We'd said over the last 3 years he has not come to the Giro d'Italia without a win. He's got it this year, and look at that face on him there. Just briefly, although it may be, he has equalled a 59-year-old record, and I think we will get some very nice quotes from Mario Cipollini tonight, and he's got to say once again, Phil, a very big thank you to that train of his. They are the best.
Well, here we go. Watch this. Patacchi suddenly goes across to the right of our picture here, but then as he came back to him, he wasted ground, in fact, and Cipollini got the victory. The world champion, his one ambition was to win a stage of the Giro wearing that jersey, which is the jersey of a world champion. And now he has done that for the first time in his career, and at the same time has equalled the record of Alfredo Binda. He now has a total of 41 wins. There are still stages left to make that record his very own, and if he does, I feel pretty certain no one will ever match up to it throughout the history of our sport in the future. There we are, 41 for Cipollini, 41 for Alfredo Binda. I'm afraid Cippo can't go top because he begins with the letter C and Binda begins with the letter B.
Nice move there, though, by Giovanni Lombardi, because that was the perfect swing off. He forced Patacchi to take the longer ride round the outside. Robbie McEwen was in an ideal position, but really just didn't have the kick today to get up alongside Mario Cipollini. And Magnus Bagstead there, Phil, getting himself a very nice 4th place. But look at the face there on Mario Cipollini. And, of of course, these are the guys that did the job for him, Bob, aren't they? There's confirmation. 41 career wins at the Giro d'Italia for Mario Cipollini.
And Bagstead getting fourth there. Galvez, the top sprinter on Kelme, fifth. Nasduk's got elbowed out of it into sixth. Verada, the big sprinter from the Czech Republic, seven. Well, one has to say he beat just about all of the top sprinters there as they approached the line. And Mario Cipollini will sleep very easy tonight now. He won't have to give any explanation as to how he lost the stage narrowly to another sprinter. He's now come back to the big time. You see, after 8 days of racing, your form does get better, amazingly, after the day of the big mountain. The man who hates the mountains has come back the next day and landed that brilliant win. I think the whole world will be happy with that because he is such a great entertainer. And don't forget, he's over 36 years of age now, and to find the twitch fibres that produce a finish like that really is quite amazing. So it's the city of Arezzo that will be remembered now as the place where Mario Cipollini equalled the record of Alfredo Binda, the man who won in 1928, and Cipollini won here in 1997 and in the year 2003. No change at all in the overall because they all finished together today, but we'll still look at the prize presentations. I think these will be pretty special. We'll take a very short break. Back to the Giro d'Italia. Well, moments ago, Mario Cipollini, the world champion, has made a little bit of history in this race. He's got the stage win, which gives him 41 in total since he started winning them back in 1989. And that means he goes alongside Alfredo Binda now, equal on the record number of stage wins. He always said he wanted to win a stage of the Giro, his favourite race, wearing that rainbow jersey, which signifies he is the world champion. And he's done it now. He can relax because there's still more opportunities along the road too. So Cipollini getting the win over all of the big sprinters here. McEwen of Australia second, Pataki, the man in the points lead, third, Bagstead of Sweden fourth, good ride by Magnus, and Isaac Galvez Lopez there in fifth, the top sprinter on the Kelme. The only man missing out the top five, probably Graham Brown. Now we're looking now at Stefano Garzelli. He's had his first full day in the pink leader's jersey. He's happy enough. It was a fairly routine day for him, but it wasn't, as we'll see in the overall situation, a routine day for some of the riders because they lost time in the finishing sprint. 10 seconds docked, in fact, to Andrea Noe and other riders who were at the wrong end of the split in those last couple of kilometres. Pelazzotti, in fact, coming up now into fourth place. And Sabalaikis and indeed Pavel Tonkov among a number of riders who really must pay more attention. And I think that's true, isn't it, Paul? Because you get riders here who really have got to pay attention in those sprints. Simoni and Garzelli don't make those mistakes.
Well, they've been very attentive, Phil, since the very start of this bike race. They've not lost any time at all. It's interesting to know that Stefano Garzelli is the man who's been the best at staying at the front end of the peloton. He, at the end of the day, has ended up on top of the leaderboard because he hasn't lost any time in the sprints. There's been no decisive time trials. I think he's in great form, and it just goes to show the race is won from the front.
It is, but we're all happy tonight. But we're all relieved, aren't we, really? He's over the line first. You didn't think he was going to do it today.
Relief is more like it, and he was so happy to win that stage, I think, because it was so hard for him to get there after so many close calls in the sprints before that. The Tifosi cried out from the wilderness, and Mario Cipollini delivered manna from heaven. Everything is right in Italy now. The pasta will be very sweet tonight.
It certainly will, and Mario Cipollini is going to look at that footage for the years to come when his career is finally over. We hope not too soon. He's 36 years of age. He can still sprint like that. All right, well, tomorrow the race goes on, of course, and it could be another Cipollini win because there are no official hills on the road tomorrow, though the roads are undulating as we head up to Monte Catini Terme. And there'll be no King of the Mountains challenges, and I'm sure Cipollini, now he's got one win in the bag, will be itching to get that 42nd stage. You can join us live tomorrow morning. We're back live, don't forget, as we start the week, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and our prime time programme coming to you 8 p.m. Eastern Time and Pacific, and that will be a full day of coverage yet again of this great race, the Giro d'Italia. All information, don't forget, is on our website with words from Bob, Paul and myself, Phil Liggett, and the address there for you is olntv.com. The action continues still, as far as we know. All the riders are in today. 165 men survive as the Giro goes on now to its 9th day of racing. Well, history today. He's done it. The world champion, Mario Cipollini, has now On the road of the Giro d'Italia, stage 9 today, and who knows, with the confidence now of that win yesterday, Mario Cipollini could be in the thick of the action again. I'm Phil Liggett, joined of course by Paul Sherwen and by Bob Roll. It's not all good news though for Mario Cipollini, because just before the start today he heard that his team was not selected among the wild cards for the Tour de France. I can't repeat on television what his comments were, but I think suffice it to say, Paul, he wasn't too happy.
He wasn't very happy at all, Phil, but I think more importantly, yesterday he was not thinking about the Tour de France or selection. He was thinking about trying to get himself a victory he's been chasing since stage 1 of this year's Giro d'Italia. And the team and Mario Cipollini got it absolutely perfect yesterday in the charge for the line. It was like the Mario Cipollini of old, and I can tell you on the podium afterwards, he was very, very relieved. Not only did he equal the record of Alfredo Binda, he also realised one of his other dreams, Phil, and that was to win a stage of the Giro d'Italia in the rainbow jersey, a feat which hasn't been done for 16 years, and the last time that was done, it was done by Moreno Argentin.
Indeed it was. It was a big moment for him there, Bob. Bob, but Mario apart, we were paying attention obviously to the front, but other riders, men are trying to win this race on time, weren't paying attention because there were time splits again in the peloton yesterday.
Yes, these sprints have been so competitive and so furious to the line that they've opened up gaps in the peloton, and only 20 guys made it across at the same time as Mario Cipollini. You can see Garzelli and Simoni riding right at the front. This is only a couple of kilometers from the finish. You can see that the sprint is full-blown at this point with Cipollini on his zebra train, and those two riders were the only guys in our top 10 GC, except for Pelizzotti, that was able to stay in the front of the bike race and not get tailed off. Noe losing time, Rumsauce losing time, Casagrande, Frigo Gonzalez, and Pantani all given 10 seconds behind the leaders, and after 3 weeks those 10 seconds start to add up and you find yourself 2 minutes behind without expending any energy or losing time in the mountains, and that's a big deficit, and it gives Simoni and Garzelli a little bit of an advantage psychologically. They can take it easy. They know they've got a couple minutes in hand. It changes the complexion of the whole GC battle, and you've got to pay attention and stay right in the front. That's why a stage race is so difficult.
Well, this race is painful enough in the mountains. To give away seconds in the sprint does seem a little bit silly. Well, the man who is in charge of the pink jersey for a second day is Stefano Garzelli. He was untroubled yesterday. It was routine for him. He didn't lose any time at all. Here he is on the podium for the first time this tour in the leader's pink jersey last night, enjoying the adulation from two very nice Italian ladies as he now prepares for another day in pink. We can remind ourselves now as to the overall situation, and there is changes because of that split in the peloton. Garzelli Simoni finished well. Noe lost a little bit of time, although he retained third place. Pelizzotti came up there to fourth. Other men, Popovic paid attention. He held on to 7th. He finished in the front. Rumsauce lost a little bit of time. Of the notables, Casagrande lies 11th, Perez 12th, and right down at the bottom, 7 minutes behind, is Aitor Gonzalez. He's not showing the same form which carried him to victory in last September's Tour of Spain, but maybe he'll find his legs as we get to the mountains. Now, Paul, this is a good course for Cipollini. It would be wonderful to see him now take the outright record of Binda, but there's plenty of men would like to outsprint him at the finish.
Well, a lot of riders, Phil, they will be looking to try and get themselves another stage victory. Let's not forget Pataki is in fine form right now, but they're going today through an absolutely beautiful part of Italy. We're going through Firenze, skirting around Pisa. It's a flat course the riders face, 160 kilometres from Arezzo to Montecatini Terme. Cipollini, I think, will have the confidence, and he may try again.
Thank you, Paul. And here we are. You've arrived bang on cue because we're at the 97-kilometre point here, and we're about to take the sprint of the Intergiro competition. Let's have a quick look at the overall standings here. Moreno Di Biase leads this competition by 18 seconds over Bagstead. Now, none of these names on the bottom of the picture are in the frame for the sprint, because we have a breakaway of 6 riders up here, and the big sprinter as Fabio Sacchi sitting it out at the back there, as it looks like Sandy Cesar who's coming through over the line in first place. Now, this is at Cetaldo here, 97 kilometres. This breakaway getting away at the 65-kilometre point, so they're just over 30 kilometres up front. The last time check we got, they had 1 minute and 51 seconds, so they're building a nice little lead, and a very quick pace today, by the way. Let's have a look at that sprint again. It looks like Française des Jeux, which means that this is Sandy Cesar. taking out the sprint there from the Gerolsteiner rider, Gianni Farizin, and Thomas Brogina in third place. The rest of the breakaway is Fabio Sacchi, Marzio Brusegin, and Vladimir Milalevic from the Alessio team.
Well, the most dangerous rider in this leading group, in fact, is Gianni Farizin. He started the day in 25th place, 5 minutes 43 behind. But looking down on the main field, you can see they're not taking any prisoners this afternoon either. They're not giving any breakaways the chance to survive. The speed is on in the main field, and they're hoping to try and peg back this leading group of 6 men. Here they are again, Milosevic, Brosnia, Brusegin, Kassar, Farizin and Sacchi, and it's rather interesting that it's a whole mixture of different teams who are looking for the breakaway on what is a very testing route today, Phil, although there are no major climbs.
Well, Bob, this is not such a routine day because it's been quite quick so far. Weather conditions are perfect for racing at this centre of Italy point.
Glorious day for bike racing today in Italy, and the riders are not disappointing the weather at all. They've raced fast all day. Gianni Farizin in the break, the top guy on GC in that breakaway, a handy little bike raider. He rides for the German Gerolsteiner team. And their big man, David Rebellin, not able to compete in the Giro because of a crash. And I think they're missing him a little bit, but Farizin trying to make it up.
A little bit of a flurry there, and the peloton have closed in at the Intergiro point to 1 minute and 32 seconds. We'll take our first break. Join us right after the action as they decide how they're going to hunt down these 6 breakaways.
Sì, ma secondo me il Giro d'Italia è soprattutto tradizione. L'uomo chi sa tutto è naturalmente il vecchio Popchi.
Bindi ha vinto la sua 60ª tappa nel Giro. Proprio qui!
La tradizione sì, d'accordo, ma anche la corsa è grande.
Welcome back to the Giro d'Italia. The breakaway of 6 riders, about 1 minute and 30 seconds now ahead of the field. Julian Wynne, the British champion, second wheel here, as we're now looking at stage 9, exactly 100 miles today, and we're 60 kilometres from the finish. Well, as we look down on the peloton, there's still plenty of riders in that big field because for the last few days nobody has dropped out. From the original 169, which started a week last Saturday down in Lecce, we still have 165 riders left, and of the 19 teams, 14 still have those 9 riders. The weather's also looking good, Paul.
Well, it's not a bad day. In fact, these are rather cool days for this part of Italy. It's 80 degrees Fahrenheit. It's slightly overcast with a few clouds coming in, but I think what might cause a bit of a problem on the run in towards the finish, Bob, is this 15-mile-an-hour wind coming as a southwesterly. It'll be a cross tailwind for most of the stage, and that's pretty dangerous.
That is quite dangerous because everyone is going a little bit faster than they normally would, but the reaction time stays the same. So when you have an increase in tempo, not because of effort, but because of the wind, the race becomes very dangerous and even more critical for our GC contenders to stay right in the front of the bike race. We've had a crash or a huge tempo in every sprint so far, and a lot of guys losing time to our 2 leaders, Simoni and Garzelli. I think the only guys to emerge unscathed so far after this much racing and still be almost on equal time on GC, but with Garzelli a little bit of an advantage over Simoni because he's won 2 stages and got the time bonuses for those.
Just looking down on the back of the field here, this is Luca De Angeli from the Italian and the Colombian team, the only Colombian team in the race. Just dropping back to his team car for a chat. By the way, if you're just joining our live coverage, just a reminder that we'll be discussing later on the non-selection in the Tour de France of the world champion Mario Cipollini. He only heard about that minutes before he started this morning, and he was nonplussed about that. In fact, he was very upset. We'll discuss that a little later in the programme. There's Marco Pantani. Looks as though he's beginning to enjoy his race around Italy this year.
Well, he had a few squeals in the press about his performance in the mountains just the other day, but I think he will find himself improving as the race goes on. He seems pretty happy on the flatter stages at the moment, Bob, as he hasn't really been able to confirm what he did over the first 4 or 5 days.
Dario Pieri there, one of our stars of the classics, tapping him on the head there, maybe give him a little bit of extra motivation. Pieri's had a great season so far, and he's put into this Giro to do the tempo for Gilberto Simoni, and I don't think you could find a stronger guy in world cycling today than Dario Pieri, or a wider load for Simoni to sit in the slipstream and do about half as much work as everybody else in the field.
A bit of bad news coming in there, Phil, because as we went through that feeding station, it's being announced that one of the riders from Lotto Domo, Art Vierhouten, in fact, abandoned from the race. And this is very often a point where riders who are not feeling all that good will look to take a right-hand turn and get into the team car. So obviously a bit of sickness coming in after 9 days of racing. And I tell you, with still a couple of weeks to go and the hardest part of the Giro d'Italia still to come, there will start to be a lot more withdrawals, I think, as we get further into this bike race.
It's not good for Lotto because they lost one of their pre-race favourites, Rick Verbrugge, on stage 4 when he didn't start after the crash coming down into the finish the previous day. So there are 2 men down in Lotto now. That's the sprinters team, don't forget, for Robbie McEwen. And Robbie himself, he's already told us he's not going to finish the Tour. He's going to probably go home on day 13 of the race to prepare for the Tour de France. So that team could be in a little bit of trouble. There's the latest gap for the 6 leaders. Quickly give you the names again. Vladimir Ilovic from the Alessio team, Sandy Cazar, Française des Jeux, Fabio Sacchi Seiko, Thomas Brezhina from the CCC Polsat team, Marzio Brusegin, Faso Bortolo, and Gianni Fadazin from Gerolsteiner. There's the list of names for you. There's the result as we saw it. They're in fact saying that Miocic, can't say his name properly, he got second in that sprint. I thought it was Farazine. They've given Farazine third as they've looked at the photo finish, probably. This is Thomas Brezhina. And the breakaway establishing themselves at the moment, but this is a good pace today. The riders are going to come in well on schedule. And I can't see Mario Cipollini's team allowing a breakaway to succeed when there's a real chance here for him to get what would be the outright record number of stage wins. It was nice to know that overnight late Alfredo Binder's daughter did telephone Mario Cipollini to congratulate him on his achievement. It really is a most incredible thing. 70 years on, for a man like Cipollini to now be able to say he has won 41 stages of this race. In modern day cycling, it is something we really should never be talking about. It simply doesn't happen. So 51 kilometres to go as we look at Thomas Brezhina leading the charge towards the finish at Montecatini Terme. We'll take a break. Looking down on the main field of the peloton now, they're just on 60 kilometres from the finish. Might be a little less than that now as we race the 100 miles towards Montecatini Terme. We've got a breakaway of 6 riders still clear of the field. The peloton seem to be pegging them now at around about 1.5 minutes. And we've just been through the Intergiro sprint at Certaldo, which was at 97 kilometres. And we can confirm the result of that now, because first over the line, Sandy Cazar of Française des Jeux, and then came Vladimir Miholivic of the Alessio team and Gianni Fadazin of Gerolsteiner in 3rd place. And Fadazin, best placed man in the breakaway, currently lying 25th in the rankings, 5 minutes 43 seconds behind the race leader Stefano Garzelli.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Phil, I cannot see a lot of Mario Cipollini's boys coming to the front to organise the pacemaking right now, maybe because Cipollini will have studied the race finish, which is not really ideally suited to his kind of accelerations. In fact, the last 1.5 kilometres are fairly straight until you get to 350 metres to go, and then there's almost a hairpin turn back on yourself with the last 100 metres curving round towards the left. So maybe Cipollini will leave it to some of the other teams to do the bulk of the pacemaking on the front end of the main field. But I have to say one thing, I'm sure he's absolutely relieved at getting that win under his belt, because he probably over the first week of this bike race had some serious psychological problems, and we know that Mario Cipollini very often, when things don't go right, can just walk away from the bike race. Now, Bob, I think he may well try and stay in this Giro d'Italia all the way to Milano.
Well, that must have been a huge boost to his morale and the team's morale. Cipollini, there he is, taking off his t-shirt underneath his jersey because it's getting so warm. That's a magnificent physique there. That is the Lion King, the best sprinter of all time in my books, and he's just tied a fantastic record that we never thought we'd see fall. 41 stage wins in the modern era of any Grand Tour is a magnificent accomplishment, and he's got his teammate back there to help him. I think, like you said, it'll give him a lot of morale to start going for more of these sprints. Was really hard, even sweeter because it was so difficult to get that elusive win. But for Mario Cipollini, Giro stage wins are kind of like the subway. If he misses one train, another one comes along shortly. and he is on the freedom train now, bound for glory.
Well, actually, one thing he was saying, and he didn't whinge all that much about missing out on his wins in the early part of this Giro d'Italia, but now that he's got a win under his belt, he's trying to explain the fact, Phil, that he didn't have the sparkle in the first week of the Giro d'Italia, in the fact that he actually may be overtrained coming into this bike race, which is why he didn't have the zip towards the end. Now, if that is true, once we get into 9 or 10 days of this bike race, he may well be able to come back to the Mario Cipollini of old.
Well, if he's going to go all the way to Milan, you never know with Mario. He's probably got 5 shots at winning stages before then. But what a difference a year makes, especially if your name is Mario Cipollini. And here's Paul Sherwen with more.
12 months ago, Super Mario Cipollini announced to the world that he would retire from the sport. But a man who's been adored by the crowd since 1989 and has regaled us with a multitude of records and wins, wanted one last chance at becoming the world champion and equaling the 59-year-old stage win record of Alfredo Binda. After winning the World Championships last year in Zolder, Belgium, it was regarded as a foregone conclusion that he would take the record on stage 1 of this year's Giro. Wrong. Cipollini was surprisingly beaten by Alessandro Petacchi and had been every time they came head-to-head in the sprints after that. He tried to be philosophical and blamed his age, admitting that even if he couldn't equal the record, he'd still been a great champion. But inside, he still dreamed and was filled with the desire to be the king of the sprints once again. Cipollini already holds 2 very prestigious records as winner of the fastest road stages at the Tour de France and the Giro d'Italia. Now that he's finally scored his first win in this year's event, Mario Cipollini has equalled Binda's record. But he will not sit back, and the desire to have his name at the top of the list in the record books will push him to try and get one more win.
Well, there they are, the field containing Mario Cipollini, running at about 1.5 minutes behind the 6 escapers. They got clear at 65 kilometres today of this 160-kilometre race. Gianni Father's in here in the breakaway, best placed, but he's still looking for 5 3/4 minutes to recapture that time gap if he wants the pink jersey. I don't think that will be possible. Sandy Kézard, Française des Jeux, the only French team in the race, also in the breakaway. A little bit of a mistake there by Factor today, I think, Paul. They should have put somebody in that breakaway with the Inter-Giro sprint coming.
Well, with their man Magnus Backstedt, who's riding an absolutely superb Giro d'Italia so far, they should have looked to put somebody in that group. But nobody who is challenging the overall lead of Marino De Biasi was up there either. So maybe not such a big worry for those riders. And I think we won't see a change in that tomorrow either, because we have a very difficult stage tomorrow. That competition, I think, will repart when we come up to the flatter stage on stage 11. But these 6 guys right now have got themselves a good chance of breaking the stranglehold of the sprinters, although they've not really been allowed that much freedom. They've never managed to stretch their advantage to more than 1 minute and 44 seconds. And as you look down on the main field here, you can see they are bowling along, aren't they, Bob, at a fairly decent speed.
They are clipping along nicely today. And I think Mario Cipollini most certainly is glad to be back in his home region of Toscana. They just came to the southern border yesterday in Arezzo, and he got a stage win. He's very happy to be back in Toscana from the heat in the south. It is quite warm today. And that change of shoes there, it looks like that's Fabio Baldato. Not easy to do, but when you have to do something in a bike race, they're not going to wait for you, and you got to be able to really think on your feet, as it were.
Yeah, a little bit of helping hand from the mechanic there, and in fact, providing you don't gain ground, you can hang on to the vehicle for a minor adjustment like this over a limited distance, about 50 to 100 yards in fact. Then they're supposed to let go of one another, but no problems on. When the race is not in angry mood, there's no problems at all. And they're not yet in angry mood because there's still just under 50 kilometres to race to the finish. It'll change, believe me. We'll take another short break. The charging peloton, the big pack of the riders in the Giro d'Italia today, and they're holding the escape now, but they're not yet closing it down. I think they're waiting till a little bit closer to the end, because they know if they do close it down, Paul, and that's usually the cue for somebody else to attack.
Well, it's always a strange situation when you do have a breakaway off the front, because most professional bike riders don't want to try and bridge a gap of 1.5 minutes, because they realise what will happen is that they get caught in no man's land, and they always wait until the moment when they actually catch a breakaway before launching the counter-attack. So it does keep a fair amount of control over the front end of the peloton, and that's what the teams of the sprinters are banking on at the moment. They are banking on catching this leading group of 6 riders as we get closer to the finish, maybe in the last 10 or 15 kilometres. And that's a tactic, Bob, we've seen adopted very many times. Dario Pieri here in the main field seems to be having a very nice day.
He's having a great day. It looks like he feels strong. He knows that his team captain, Gilberto Simoni, is on great form as he demonstrated on the Tirminillo climb, and look for that whole Saeco team to be doing good.
Let's not forget, Phil, the Saeco team at the moment are doing themselves a very good job, because not only have they got Gilberto Simoni well up in the overall classification, ready to pounce to take over the overall lead, but they are in fact leading the best team competition as well. Gives an indication that for the moment they are the team with the best strength in depth.
Well, through this rather nice grove of trees, looks very much like a French road, this, rather than one in the centre of Italy. Remember, today we pop over and go on the outskirts of Florence as we race through some of the famous landmarks here on our way to the finishing line. Montecatini Terme, that's the bath city. But the rides themselves know this finish very well indeed. Many of them, it's been here before, and it's exactly 100 miles. And they're going to beat the 4 hours, I think, today for the 100 miles. As we now look here at Fontanelli, Fabiano Fontanelli, teammate. It looks like he's got the route in his back pocket there, Bob. You think he'd know the way, he's Italian.
He's from this region as well, so one presumes he won't get lost, especially if he has a map there. Mostly the riders using that for the profile, actually, and nothing on the route today to throw too many shockwaves in. But tomorrow, and especially the Zoncolan stage, when they pull that little card out of their packet and see the last 15 Ks go straight up into the stratosphere, well, that will give some pause. And there's our Mexican rider, Julio Perez there. He's doing a decent Giro so far. Initially at the start of the race, he wanted to go for the GC, committed himself to staying in the front of the bike race without attacking throughout the first stages, but he lost a little bit of time going up the Tirminillo climb to Garzelli and Simoni, and he may have to change his tactics and try to go for a stage win that we've seen him do in the last couple of Giros to emphatic effect, winning 2 last year and doing a great job and becoming one of the big stars of Italian cycling in the process.
Well, just a quick glimpse there at Sandy Cassar, who is in the leading breakaway, and he's regarded as one of the French stars of the future. That was really something that happened last year when he came up to 2nd place in the overall classification of Paris-Nice. He's a youngish rider, Phil. He turned professional back in 1999, but he's still, in fact, only 24 years of age. He's looked for the move on a couple of occasions in the Giro d'Italia, and one day or another, I think it will pay for the Française de Jeu team.
Yes, I think he's still got a lot of growing up to do. He's only won 1 race, but yeah, we do think he's got a lot of talent, and this is a nice little expedition for him today, because these are the young riders on Française des Jeux, and this is their first taste of a long stage race. Remember, this race is 3 weeks long, and it's over 2,000 miles in length, so a lot of things happen to your body when you're racing 4 to 7 hours a day over these period of 3 weeks. You only get 2 days off. And guess what they do on the days off? They go for a bike ride, of course, because they've got to keep the body nice and supple.
Well, it's a fabulous day for the riders, and I'm sure Phil would enjoy to be down alongside them, because we're going through some of the most wonderful Chianti growing regions this afternoon, Phil, and I'm sure you wouldn't mind dropping off to one of the degustation places to try a little bottle.
Well, I'd probably have a look to my left or right, Bob, just to make sure the grapes were developing nicely. We don't pick them for a few months yet, of course.
That's right, not till the fall. And in this region, Chianti, you have an incredible variety of yummy delicacies that only Italians can produce. Wine, pasta, the ice cream is to die for. So any cycling fan out there that hasn't ridden in Italy yet has got to get a ticket over there. A day like today, riding through Toscana on a bicycle is a singular experience, not to be missed out in a life well led.
Well, there's the beautiful scenery, the Chianti vineyards all around the riders, and this breakaway of 6 getting away at around 65 kilometres. Nobody in this breakaway realistically is affecting the destiny of the final pink jersey in Milan, the race leader of the Tour. Stefano Garzelli, not worried at all, because he knows these boys are not going to climb mountains like he can, and there's still the high Dolomites and the Alps to come up in the north of the country. The last week of this Tour is when we'll talk more about who is going to be the final winner. I think before then we're going to probably concentrate on who can climb the classification and maybe become challengers in that final week.
Well, they're having a hard time pulling back any time gap on these 6 riders at the moment. Just sitting at the back here, Brusegin, I don't think he'll do an awful lot right now to help the breakaway succeed, Bob, as we go through 40 kilometres to go, because at the start of this bike race, Fassa Bortolo were regarded as a team with two very serious contenders, Dario Frigo, who really seemed to crumble on the first mountain of this bike race, and of course Aitor Gonzalez was brought into Fassa Bortolo to be a team leader when it came to the 3-week Grand Tours, and he certainly crumbled on the first mountain of this year's bike race.
Well, let's not forget in the off-season he actually had signed 2 contracts, one with Mario Cipollini's team, Domano Vacanze. He signed that before he had won the Giro, and Mario Cipollini's team manager, so astute to identify him as a great talent, tried to ostensibly sign a contract with him. After he won the Tour of Spain, he signed another contract with the Fassa Bortolo team, obviously a much bigger formation with a lot bigger budget. And so throughout the off-season, rather than train and get ready for the season, he was busy litigating these 2 contracts. Finally, they found in favor, the courts did, of Fassa Bortolo. That's the team he actually wanted to ride for because they were paying him more money, of course. But now we see that he hasn't been concentrating on his training that much, hasn't had a great season so far, and really suffered up the climb of the Terminillo.
Hopefully get it all right when he comes up to the Tour de France later in the year, because many people see him as a future challenger to Lance Armstrong, although I think he needs a couple more years of experience under his belt. But he does have the ability of being a man able to get himself over the big mountains, and Phil, he can ride an exceptionally good individual time trial.
Well, there's no doubt he's got the talent required to win a big stage race. He's done it. But maybe he's holding his form back for later on, the Tour de France, or maybe, more importantly for him, the Tour of Spain, if the team, of course, go, because Italian teams don't often visit the Tour of Spain these days. Well, that little wind that's creeping across from the left of our picture, Paul told us it was cross to tail. We'll keep the riders on the right-hand side of the road for most of the way today. It's not really a wind to talk about. It's just a nice little breeze, the majority of the wind being made by the speed of the peloton, I think, as they continue at about 1 minute 39 seconds behind the 6 leaders. We are inside now, the last 25 miles to go, which means we've got about 50 minutes of racing left. And so I think the peloton are going to sharpen their act up now as they try to chase them down. Mario Cipollini isn't going to throw away a chance like this without having one more go at winning a stage, because it gets a little bit hilly for the rest of the week with one-day exception. And of course the last week, well, forget Cipollini, we are in the real high mountains. But today we'll find out very shortly if he can pull these 6 men back. Let's take a break.